Hey there, welcome back. Glad you could join me today. I was just working on, uh, I was just thinking actually about times I've been undefeated. And I'll be honest with you, it's kind of hard to think of times that are undefeated because it's actually a little bit easier for me to think about times I was defeated. In fact, last Sunday I was telling the 6th and 7th grade boys about my 7th grade year of soccer where I scored half the goals for my team, which was one goal. We scored 2 goals for an entire season. We lost every game. Our coach gave up on us, didn't even try to coach us anymore, just said go scrimmage. When we got to practice, it was pretty awful. How about you? Have you ever experienced defeat? My guess is that you have. Right now, if you're an athlete or a musician or I don't know, you might be experiencing defeat because all the things that you're preparing for are not on the calendar anymore. They're gone. Thanks a lot. Quarantine, right? There's a lot of defeat maybe that's going around. But there's another kind of defeat that we can feel that is totally inside of us. A defeat that we feel when we keep doing something or thinking something or looking at something that we know we shouldn't, but we do it anyways. And that kind of defeat is hard. It affects how we see ourselves, how much we like ourselves maybe. Makes us wonder if things will always be that way. Makes us ask, can I ever defeat the things that are defeating me? If you're going through this, you're not alone. In fact, we all struggle with things that we do and think that hurt us or hurt others or hurt God. And we have a name for that, sin. And sin affects all of us. But I'm only talking about this because I believe there's hope for anybody who has to deal with sin, which is everybody. I feel like there's hope for everybody. And it starts with Easter. Because Easter is all about Jesus. And as Christians, we believe that God became human form, came down, walked around on earth, and taught, and lived, and died, and came back to life, all in the form of Jesus. And last week we talked about how on Easter Jesus defeated separation from God. But this week I want to talk about something else Jesus did on Good Friday and Easter, because Jesus defeated something else. That's why we're in this series called Undefeated. So one of the people we're going to talk to, I think we talked about this guy last week. His name is Paul, and he wrote most of the New Testament. And he's just a really important leader in the early church. And one of the things that he said is this: God caused the one who didn't know sin to be sin for our sake. So through him, we could become the righteousness of God. So, who is he talking about? Who is the one who didn't know sin but became sin? Paul's talking about Jesus, because Jesus is God and God is perfect or holy. It means that they've never sinned before. Something that's kind of hard for us maybe to imagine. So Paul says this other thing about how he became sin for our sake. How does that work? How does Jesus become sin? Why does it have to happen? I'll be honest, this is something that people have been trying to figure out for a long time. I don't know if I have a good answer for it. So let's move past that, because I think there's something that's even more important. Because Paul says that he became sin for our sake. Paul tells us why Jesus did what he did on Good Friday and Easter. He did it for us. He did it because he loves us. He did it because we are so easily defeated by sin, and Jesus isn't. So he took action. Jesus loves us, and Jesus is for us. He is for us. He is pro us. And something happens on Easter. Something pretty amazing happens. Is that we aren't just people who struggle with sin anymore. We become something new. Paul says that we become the righteousness of God. What is righteousness of God? Probably the best way to think about it is we have right standing with God. What that means is kind of the opposite of how most of us think about God. We think that when God looks at us, God sees somebody who has messed up. God sees our mistakes when God looks at us. But when we become the righteousness of God, when Jesus gives us that amazing gift, that means that God sees past our mistakes and failures and sin. God doesn't even see those things. Instead, God sees Jesus. And what do we know about Jesus? Jesus is 1-0 against sin, undefeated. If Paul's right, God doesn't see the defeated me, he sees undefeated Jesus. And God sees someone that is loved and sacrificed for. And that's why we can say what our bottom line is for this week. Because of Jesus, sin is defeated. Because of Jesus, sin is defeated. And what Jesus did is offered to everybody equally. We didn't ask for it. We didn't do anything to deserve it. Jesus just does it. So your sin and my sin and everybody else's sin is defeated. And that makes everybody 1-0 against sin as well. Maybe you're thinking, great, that's really great news, but I don't feel like that. It doesn't help me at all. And I get it. That's how sin works, because sin wants to create distance between us and God. Sin wants us to hide in darkness. Sin wants us to think that we can never be healthy again. But that gives us an opportunity to invite Jesus' ability to defeat sin into every area of our life. Jesus knocks, but it's up to us to answer the door. So how do we answer the door and invite Jesus in? I think the first thing is we need to define what makes us feel defeated. Are there habits, choices, relationships, circumstances, secrets that make us feel defeated? Just name them. Know what they are. Know that they exist and put a name to them. That's so important. It's a great first step. And then once you know it, confess it. Confess means to just tell God what God already knows. Just say, God, I need help. I'm sorry. I need something else. And then you can confess to God. Maybe you need to confess to somebody else. Maybe somebody you've hurt. Let them know that you want their forgiveness. And then you need to ask God to remember to help, or not to remember, God always remembers. You need to ask God to help you remember, to see you as God sees you, as the righteousness of God, as someone who's in right standing with God. Remember, Jesus defeated sin, but that doesn't mean that we're going to feel undefeated all the time. But when we feel defeated, we have an opportunity to bring Jesus into it. What if this Easter you defined what's defeating you and took a step towards defeating it? Take a step towards inviting Jesus to defeat it, the one who's undefeated, who gives us victory. Imagine what next Easter would be like. Imagine the story you would have to tell of how Easter became real for you and how you knew new life. So, what's holding you back from inviting God in, from inviting others in, from inviting Jesus, who is undefeated, to share with you his victory? Thanks. See you guys later.